Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Lorenzo's Music Podcast. I'm Tom, and this is a show where I talk to musicians, people who create things for musicians, and also with a skew on open source, Creative Commons, and federated culture, I will say. And that is, two of those are what the person here today I am talking to is about. That's a horrible sentence, but you get where I'm going with it. Why don't you introduce yourself to the people and tell them who you are and what it is you do?
Yeah, thanks. So you probably know me, if you know me at all, as Ether Diver. That's sort of my nom de tune artist name. My actual name's Cory Casciato, if you're actually very curious. I am a semi-retired music journalist, musician, and creator of things for musicians. Like you said, both I do reviews of independent artists, of their independent releases that are available on equitable platforms, so no Spotify, nothing that's somewhere where someone can give you money for your music, even if you are offering it for free. That's totally fine. I'll still review that. And then I create things like sample packs and presets and stuff like that. And I also make music on my own.
What are presets? What are presets? What's that? That's the one thing I didn't understand.
So presets for a synthesizer, so I've released 3 or 4. Okay, so I did about 100 for the Hydra synth that I released, and they're just sounds, sounds programmed for musicians to use. Some people, I love to create my own sounds. That's actually a big part of what got me into music and what I get excited about. Some people hate that part of it. For some people, that's like pulling teeth, and I'm happy to share. I actually create more sounds than I could probably ever use. And sometimes I create sounds that just don't really fit within my music too, but they should have a home. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. I might try and create a transgate sound. Even though my music doesn't, that kind of big that's in big trance music, big room trance, just for the exercise of creating it. But I'm probably not going to use something like that. Or if I did, I'd use it in a really weird way. But once I've created, it should have a home, and I just release those for people to use. If you have a synthesizer that I have, you can download some sounds I made and use the sounds I made on your synthesizer. Basically.
Are you talking for both physical and digital software synthesizers?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So it is also for physical ones.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Micro Freak, you can see my Micro Freak over there. That's one of my favorite synths. I don't currently have any available for it just because I switched where I was selling them and I took everything down from one side and I'm slowly moving it over to the other, and I haven't put the Micro Freak patches back up. But I'll have about 100 Micro Freak patches. That's probably the most popular synth I've released stuff for. I'll have about 100 of those ready in the next few weeks on my Ko-Fi page. I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce that.
Yeah, I don't know how you're supposed to say it either. I just say Ko-Fi now.
Ko-Fi,
I'm the same, yeah.
But then I also have a bunch for Pigments, which is a soft synth from Arturia, another Arturia synthesizer. And I have some for the Hydra synth, like I said. And then it's a bunch of sample packs as well, which, that's... And I intend to release more. I'm going to release some for the Op 6, which is back there. That'll also be... There's digital and physical versions of that, and it'll work with either. What else have I... Oh, yeah, I might at some point release some for, like... Any synth that I have is, at least in theory, I would release some for, but it's got to be worth the effort of packaging it up and putting it together because if it's something that's too obscure, I don't get a ton of people downloading it. I'm a pretty niche artist, so it's not like 5,000 people download my sample packs or whatever. I get like a dozen people to download them. So if I don't think that in the synth presets, even fewer, because everyone's got a sampler, but not everyone has a specific synth, right? So.
Okay. All right, and then first of all, where are you located in the world right now?
Oh, yeah, so these days I am in Sacramento, California. Okay. Where am I from? I guess I was born in Wyoming, and I've lived all over the country, but mostly in Colorado. That's I spent 29 years in Colorado, and that's where I had like my career as a music journalist and did most of what I've done is in Colorado. I moved to California 2 years ago. So. Were
you already a musician while you were doing the journalism?
Yes, sort of.
That didn't sound confident. Yeah.
Well, I've been a musician since I was 19 years old. That's when I started.
Okay.
But I have severe ADHD, and I think I might possibly be autistic as well, just based on diagnoses all my children have, and the fact that it tends to be hereditary. I don't have a diagnosis, but my children have all somewhere on the spectrum, and it's hereditary, and my wife isn't, so it's probably came from me, and my dad almost certainly is too. But I bring that up only because both ADHD people and autistic folk tend to have special interests, things that they just get obsessive about, right? And music has always been one of mine. And so when I was 19, I was super gung-ho about this. But then, and this is, I think, the ADHD side, mine tend to rotate, right? So like I was so gung-ho from like 19 to 22 about doing music. And then something shifted in my life. Partially, I wasn't getting a lot of traction with the music I was making. I was having, it was a frustrating process. This was in the 90s too. It was a very different world then. And so I moved on to other interests, but that was always in the background. I never was, as a musician, it's funny. Like I was never not a musician. But there were times when it was such a small part of my life that I maybe only had one or two instruments even that I owned, and it was just something I would tinker with every few months. Like I'd fire up. For a lot of years, I just had Reason on my computer was my only instrument. It was like an old version, 2.5. And every few months, I'd fire it up and make a little loop or a little beat. Like I made a bunch of ringtones for myself when that was a thing people did. All my ringtones were custom. People were like, what the hell is that ringtone? Oh, it's something I made. What do you think of that? And stuff like that, right? So, and that was during that period where I was a music journalist. And I did a bunch of pro audio stuff at the time. Like my boss found out I had a music studio in my house, which is more my roommates at the time. Like I have a production partner, roommate, hetero life partner. I mean, I'm not hetero, but he is. It's like my long-term. We haven't lived together for years, but we lived together for a lot of years as roommates and worked on a lot of music together. So it was his studio at the time, but I had access to it. And so my boss found out, and I did a bunch of pro audio work for him, editing clips and stuff like that for the paper that I worked for. So that kind of kept me in it. So I was always sort of doing music, and I would show things, like little things I would do to the people I'd interview sometimes, and be like, oh, hey, I made, you might appreciate this. Here's this weird little experimental piece that I wrote, a few months ago. And they'd be like, oh yeah, that's nice, But it was definitely not. I wasn't releasing music. I wasn't making very much music. That's why I'm like, yes, I was a musician during that time, but not like I am now. Do you know what I mean? It was a small little piece of who I was then.
I have a similar thing in the sense that I was always singers for bands, but and I was a musician because I would be like, yes, I'm a singer in a band, but it was more I would go places, tell people about how I was in a band, and looking back, I'm like, I don't remember how we got shows or did anything but then later on, like I wasn't doing anything except showing up, and they'd go, we wrote this song, and I'd go, okay, and I'd sing some lyrics over it, and then I'd leave, and then they'd continue to work. And now it's more along the lines of like, God, all the time I wasted and probably could have propelled more during that time period, but it was just like, no, I'm a musician and I did it for 5 minutes today, so there you go. Good. I did enough for this week. Now it's like, now every day I'm just like, oh, I'll just be pondering it in my head and thinking, and then now I'm in the DAW, now I'm in the let's produce it, now let's figure out each instrument. So I get that very much so, whereas I was always a musician, but also I wasn't technically a creative musician until much later in life. And I think that's kind of what you're saying.
It is, and I didn't feel comfortable calling myself a musician for most of those years, honestly. I would tell people, oh, I make music, oh, you're a musician. I'd be like, I'm kind of a noise artist, a sound artist.
That's what I was going to ask. Were you always doing synth stuff? Were synths always okay, it was always that.
From the time when I started, so I got started because of, can I talk about my experiences? Okay.
Yeah.
When I was like 17 years old.
Prep form? You can't talk about this. You could no.
I don't know if your audience is gonna be like, "Whoa, this is a little. Shouldn't be talking about this." When I was 17 years old, so I was a music fanatic as a teenager, just absolutely obsessed. Like I was the guy in your friend group who had all the weird shit that you'd never heard of and was making mixtapes that with like one track and 15 tracks wild shit. That was me. That was me in our friend group. Like I started working when I was like 15 years old, like any job I could find just to buy records. Like my dad fucking hated it. Like, it drove him. He's like, you're making all this money, you could be putting it away for college, and what are you buying, records? What are you're an idiot, you know. Look now, Dad, didn't ever make any money, but I still have a lot of records. So
Yeah.
but
who's the fool?
Yeah, who's the fool now? So I got into, around that time, I just read music magazines like religiously, like anything I could find. I lived in a nowhere town too, so it's not like there was a music scene I could be part of. These music magazines were sort of my lifeline. It was pre-internet, obviously, so this is my lifeline to the outside world. This is how I found out. And there was this article. So these two things converged about the same time when I was 17 or 18 years old. I think it was actually 18 years old. There was an article in the back of Rolling Stone about the then nascent, there was a chill out scene that was starting to happen adjacent to rave. And like the Orb was probably the number one band that was getting coverage in the rock press at that point, as being part of that scene. And so Rolling Stone wrote this sort of, now I realize, somewhat pretty shallow, not very good article about it. But, you know, for a guy living in Wyoming in 1993 or whatever, 1992, this was about, it's like, you know, it's like this window to this whole other world. And they're like, hey, these guys are making this weird music where they just got like a 4-track and maybe a sampler and a synthesizer, and they're making this crazy music they don't really have any musical knowledge or musical talent, and they're doing this thing. And I was like, oh shit, I don't have any musical knowledge or musical talent, but I have a bunch of musical knowledge but no talent, but not theory knowledge or whatever, just like I know a lot of bands and I know what's cool. I was like, maybe I could do that, right? And then right around the same time, I took some acid at Christmas with my girlfriend at the time, who later became
as one does, yeah,
wife,
okay,
as one does. And my buddy came home with a guitar and a flanger pedal that he'd gotten for Christmas, right? And he plugged it in while we're tripping around the Christmas tree, and he let me play with it. And like, I don't know how to play guitar. And I had this article sort of in my mind, you know, but with the flanger pedal, like, just hitting weird notes and running your finger up and down the strings, especially while you're tripping your face off, sounds cool as hell, right? And so I was like, oh shit, this is exactly what they're talking about. If I get some stuff like this, if I just build a junk shop of, you know, weird gear, like, I can just make weird, crazy, fucked up outer space music without even knowing anything about music, right? Like, just clash all these crazy sounds together and just make this weird music because I was already into that kind of stuff. I as a high school kid, and just out of high school, like, I was listening to Einstürzende Neubauten and Throbbing Gristle and stuff like that, which at the time it wasn't new at the time, but it was much newer. You know, it wasn't quite hadn't ascended to classic status like it has today. It was just here's some weird shit from a decade ago.
No, I was into the whole wax track scene and everything around that time period.
Yes, wax tracks that was my blood. Yes.
By the way, did you notice when you went like this? A big thumbs up icon. Okay, you saw
thumbs
that too.
Up, yeah.
I was just like, you were talking about doing acid, and then I saw a thumbs up emoji pop up on the screen, and I'm like, what the hell just happened?
I guess it's some gestural thing, right?
Yeah, it must be. I just tried to do it, and it didn't do it. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but I was gonna say too, when you were talking about the chill scene, because around that time period, one of my favorite albums, and it's actually very hard to find in its original form, is the KLF Chill Out album. If you're familiar with that one,
I think I have that on cassette.
Oh, you do? Okay, well that's worth a lot because they have
so
much.
That's funny.
No, because they have so much unapproved and
sampling
when it was found out, like the Elvis sampling and all that kind of stuff. They released a new version of it, but it's garbage because they took out all the stuff,
all the samples, right?
Anyway, going into that. Okay, so you were doing that flange pedal and all that stuff. Now, moving forward up to, like, let's talk about, say, your recent album called Mechanics of Mysticism. Okay, there we go. So now, leading up to that, like, you've released that album in the past year, I think.
Almost exactly a year ago. It was in May of 2025.
So what is the process going from doing acid at Christmas and a flange pedal to that album there? Like, what is your process like?
So it was definitely, I mean, the whole thing was, from there to here all the way is quite a process. I'll try and compress it as much as possible because we could probably fill a whole hour with this. But yeah, so, you know, at that time, I built my first studio in the early 90s, which was very primitive by today's standards. Just a couple of synthesizers, the worst mixer you've ever seen, and just recording into a cassette deck.
Okay.
That's it. That's what I had. I did, probably an album's worth of stuff on that before I sort of hit a wall in my life. You know, I ended up getting divorced for the first time, and my life just got kind of too chaotic and whatever for me to continue with it. That was like my first real break from it. blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I went, like I said, lightly into music here and there over the years. I did a stint of DJing when I was super into the rave scene in the aughts, or like into the 90s and into the mid-aughts. I was like everyone who, I fell hard into the rave scene. I was the guy who, I almost became a promoter, actually. And that sort of did lead into my music journalism career. That was a direct
I appreciated the rave scene, but that was
journalist.
when I started to get out of it. I started from the techno, and then it started to go to rave and house music, and then it was just like, for about a year, and then I moved on. It's about where I went with that whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and it might have been the same for me, but so I got married at 19 years old, had a kid right away. I have a child she's 33, or she'll be 33 in a few months. And so while I was navigating all this stuff, I was also a young father and trying to make a living and this and that. And so when I got divorced, it was kind of like I had a second adolescence. And so I didn't do much while I was married. I didn't go to a lot of shows. I didn't, but once I was divorced, all of a sudden now my kid is with my wife at least some of the time, and I'm just a free agent now. I'm just a 25-year-old guy who, for the first time in his life, really can do whatever he wants and go wherever he wants. That's when I got into the rave scene. So I was a little older than your average raver, but I went hard at it because it was my first big scene that I was a huge part of.
Yeah.
And so for 5 years, I just was every weekend I was out at a rave or a club, and then in multiple weeknights even was clubbing. And I just really, really, really got into the culture. Love house music. Became a DJ, and then, like I said, started doing I was mostly flirting with music writing. I wasn't really doing a lot of it, but I was talking to people about it. I had this idea that I would maybe start because I was like, boy, we have this great house music scene in our city in Denver, and no one writes about it. We have 3 different papers that cover the music scene, and no one's writing about our fucking dance music scene. What is going on? And around that time, I was working in tech. I decided, fuck this. I don't want to do this anymore. Oh, my God. Sorry. Am I allowed to curse, too? I didn't even ask. Okay.
First of all, it's way too late for that to ask that.
Okay.
And no, it's perfectly fine.
It's fine. Okay, good deal. And I'm sure I've already cursed a bunch of times.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm very vulgar.
After the 12th time, you're like, wait, can I do that?
Can I do that? Yeah. I went back to college is what I did. I quit my tech job and went to college and for journalism, and just became a journalist.
Okay.
And my first job, my editor at one of those papers I was talking about found out I liked dance music within a week of me starting there, and was like, "You're the guy." He's like, "Right, we haven't covered it, and the reason why is because we don't fucking have anyone to cover it. So if you'll do it, you're the guy." So I just became the dance music guy for a fairly major paper in Denver. For
that's what I was going to ask. Was it a zine or was it an actual publication? Okay.
Yeah, it's the Westward. It's it's just called Westward. It's the alt weekly in Denver, Colorado. It's part of the Voice Media chain. So Village Voice is probably the most famous one in the chain. But that's I wrote for the Denver equivalent of the Village Voice is what I was writing for.
Okay.
And then I also wrote for the AV Club, which you probably heard of. That's the Onions. It used to be the Onion. They're not really associated anymore.
Yeah, the Onion actually started here. Is where the Onion began.
Right.
I'm in Madison. Right. Yeah.
So you know all about it then. Yeah.
Yes.
So I was. Heck, you probably know some of my coworkers from that era. I not know them personally, but at least you've read Ben Munson and some
Joe
of the people
Gardner.
that wrote for AV Club at that time. Yeah, right. Those are my colleagues or whatever. So I worked for them for 2 years. And then I went back to, when I got laid off from that, I went back to Westward and did 3 more years there, although I wasn't at that point doing music. So I was a journalist for 10 years.
Okay.
And then retired from that to kind of pursue some other things I had going on, things that are not interesting at all. They're just life things, boring things. And I got kind of out of sorts. I didn't realize it at the time. I realize now I'm only very effective as a person and happy as a person if I have something, a creative project that I can pour myself into.
Mm-hmm.
So when I retired from writing and I wasn't doing music and I was just kind of living my life and being a guy, and I got depressed and sort of started spiraling and went through a pretty dark period. Actually, I had some other shit going on. It wasn't just that I wasn't doing something creative. I was having some familial tensions. It doesn't really matter. A lot of tough stuff in my life, and I didn't have anything going on. So I was in therapy, and I realized, I need a project. I need something to do. That'll pull me out of this funk, and then I can work on these other things in my life. And so I was like, all right, you know what? I've been flirting with music on and off for my whole freaking life. I've yet to produce anything I'm actually proud of that I want to show people. Not that I'm like, oh, I made this. Is it any good? What do you think? But like something I'm like, I made this. It's good. I don't care if you like it or not. And so I was like, all right, I'm at the time I was 46. I was like, I'm approaching 50. Like if I'm going to do this, like it seems like now's the time. Like I have the time, I have a little bit of money and space in my life that I can do this. So I was like, I'm going to spend a year. I did Jonathan Colton did this Song a Week project famously. I don't know if you know who that is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He did that Song a Week project, and I'm sure he wasn't the first to do it. He was the first I heard of, and I had interviewed him, and we talked about that, and I thought, well, that's a really good format, I think, to both drive your craft forward and also just to see, do I have it? Do I have any juice at all? Mm-hmm. Like after a year, if you've produced 52 pieces and they're all ass, maybe you need a different hobby, right? Like if you're not happy with them, just forget any outside, but just like, 52 pieces that you're like, yeah, none of this is any good. Then
I get that, but it's not like producing music is this is like, even with the this goes for like the Drawvember or whatever the hell the things are, like where they go do stuff within a month or do this quickly. I get that, to make people motivated, to get them inspired, to get them to it. But also the fact too is it's like, I do worry that when a lot of people do that and they see no progress or no build in like people appreciating what they're doing, that it can be detrimental to what they do as well, because it's hard to make quality products that fast sometimes too. So I'm just saying that, like, that's with those, it's like, I've always wanted to participate in the RPM, the write a song throughout February thing. But also at the same time, it's like, I could do that, but I could also focus on writing something that really means something to me rather than churning out something every single day, So it's a weird, that's always been a weird point for me too. I see the benefit of it.
Both have merits. Sure. Yeah. Both have merits for sure.
Yeah. Because some people, they will procrastinate if they're not given a deadline.
And that's me. That's me. And that's why I was like, look, that's the thing is, over all these years, I've produced a lot of unfinished pieces. Yeah. Hundreds of them. And a small handful, maybe less than a dozen, or maybe let's just be generous and say it's 20 finished pieces over almost 20 years, right? Of making music. And I was just like, like, and I hadn't really made a lot of progress, right? Like any progress I would make, I would squander by going off and doing something else for 5 years in between. And so I was just like, all right, I'm just going to see. I don't mean to cast it in the light of like, well, if I'm not happy with the results, I'll never make music again. It was just like, I've always wanted to do this. I've never come up with anything that was meaningful to me. Let's see if I really focus on it for a year and really pour myself into it for a year. Let's see where I'm at the end of that year. And then we'll make a determination if this is something useful for my time. And it went gangbusters. The first 6 months, I produced a lot of interesting noise. Okay. And that's I do come from a noise soundscape, right, sample-delic, construction, not a music theory. Like I'm just come from hammering noises together into interesting shapes, right? But I started to learn theory as part of that. I'd always wanted to learn theory. I'd found it really inscrutable as trying to learn it from books and magazines in the 90s. It's a whole different story than trying to learn it in 2019, where you've got 500 different YouTubers explaining it in a bunch of different ways. So you just find one that jives with where you're at and works at a pace that you're comfortable with, and you learn what you can learn. And so about 6 months in, I produced a piece of music that's actually, you can listen to it. It's on my Bandcamp. It's the These Damn Birds EP. And it's actually called These Damn Birds. And it was the first thing I produced that I was like, this is music. And I like it. I think it's all right. I think it's like, I don't think it's like home run, like best piece of music I've ever heard.
Right, but it was something
like,
where
this is actual music.
Like I created, you're like, wait a minute. This isn't just me going, well, that seems neat. This was you going, oh crap, wait, no, I like that. I want to listen to it again. Yeah. Okay.
Right. And it was constructed with basic music theory stuff, but it's got an actual chord progression and it's all in key and everything's orchestrated and arranged in a way that's supposed to make sense. And I've learned a lot since then, but and I was like, wow, okay, maybe I am going to do this. shortly after that, I came up with this name, Ether Diver. At the time, I was just, each track I would give a name and then I'd make up a band name for it as well. So I made up like 50 band names over the course of the year. I came up with the name Ether Diver for a track called Ether Diver, which is also on my Bandcamp.
Okay.
And I came up with the name of the track, and I was like, oh, that's a great name. Maybe I should just use that as my artist name.
Mm-hmm.
And so I adopted it, and then I came up with this whole story about what that means, and get this drawing of the spaceship. That's the Ether Diver, and there's all this stuff. And started releasing albums, and then that built up. This is actually answering your question. That slowly over the years, from 2019 to 2025, built up to the release of Mechanics and Mysticism, which is, as of today, my magnum opus. That's like, it's as good as anything. It really is the best expression of where I'm at and what I'm capable of as a musician today. I was just writing on Blue Sky the other day. It's put me a little bit at odd in a weird place because I don't know where to go next exactly. I'm actually just figuring that out now. I have an exclusive for you if you want to hear it.
Yeah, sure.
But because I just was like, okay, well, I've done that. And that took me 2 years. I recorded that album over the course of 2 years. And the longest I'd ever spent on an album before that was about 5 months. So I actually am a big fan of because I'm a procrastinator at heart. And I've learned about myself over the years. I learned this as a journalist, actually. If you give me very strict deadlines, like you're going to lose your fucking job if you don't make the deadline.
Right.
Like strict deadlines.
Yeah.
We can't go to press with a fucking hole where your story is supposed to be. So if you don't turn it in, there will be hell to pay, right?
Yeah.
I did that for 10 years and just learned like, yeah, man, I can crank. If you tell me when you need it and like make sure I understand it's important, that it's got to be done. There's no there's no wiggle room here. I'll do it. I'll just produce it the work. But if you give me an infinite amount of time and, it's fine. Do you need a little more time? We'll give you a little more time.
Right.
I'll use it. I'll use whatever time you give me. So I set very strict deadlines for myself, one piece a week, every week that's during that year. And I'm good at, that's the other thing is, I believe personally, all motivation is self-motivation. Like when someone is telling you, I'll cut your throat if you don't turn this story in on time, you can just walk away, right? They're not really going to cut your throat. You just walk away. I'm not doing this anymore. Screw you, man.
Real fast.
Yeah. So, it's all, the point being, right? Like you always are self-motivating yourself, even if you're answering to someone else. Like really, it's because you don't want to disappoint them. Right. You don't want to face the consequence, but it's always self-motivation. I know we could get into a whole debate on that, but that's how I look at it. So once I realize that, I can just set a deadline for myself, and as long as I'm strict with myself, I'll meet the deadline. So most of my albums were produced in a month, and then I gave myself 5 months for the one previous to this, which was supposed to be 3, but I let it expand a bit because I just needed the extra time. And then this one was also supposed to be 3 months, and it expanded to 2 years because I just was not making the progress. I was not happy with where I was, and I said, you know what? I've been doing this for a while now. I've been real happy with the results that I'm getting. My gut's telling me these need more time.
Yeah.
I trust myself now.
Process.
Yeah, I trust myself and the process now enough to know, because I care about this music, I'm going to finish these pieces. I'm not going to abandon them like I have in the past. So I'm going to give myself the time. It took 2 years, which is an insane amount of time to me, but I did it. And, I think the results paid off. I definitely think it's by far the best thing I've done. It's head and shoulders above the next best thing. It's almost so much so that I'm that thing where you're like, they listen to this and they're like, wow, that's pretty good. What else should I check out? And you're like, maybe nothing. Maybe wait till I release something new.
That's the downfall of every musician. You never, it could go either way. There are people who release albums that are total garbage after their previous album, which was the one that made them. Yeah. Okay. I was going to say each album you're always going to think is better than the last, but that's not necessarily true. So I'm not going to speculate. Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Yeah.
Preference of choice for sure. And also there's a lot of songs on that album. So the one that you put out. So there's that too.
Yeah.
It's a good amount of songs. I want to say it's like 15. 12?
No, it's 12, I think. I think it's 12.
Okay, I think 12, yeah.
Here, I can pull it up, actually. It's that's wrong.
Yeah, and the artwork on it, too, while you're looking that up. You had somebody else do the artwork for that.
That is my wife did the artwork on that.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, she is, so she is, my wife is a biologist. She's a scientist by trade. So she's definitely not an artist first and foremost, but she's always kind of dabbled in art, and I am a firm believer that you got to do something. You got to make something. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be like anything. 12 songs. It doesn't have to be like you can whittle matchsticks or build ships in a bottle. It doesn't have to be something that people call art.
For sure.
Because I think all those things, if you whittle matchsticks, you're making art. If you're building ships in, that's art. Of course that's art.
Yeah.
It's weird to say that's not art. It's not capital A art. It doesn't get put in museums. People aren't go, ooh, like make high level commentary about it, but it's a creative thing that you're making, and that's art as far as I'm concerned. And I think everyone should have some sort of artistic expression, whatever it is, because it's healthy. It's good for the soul. But yeah, so she started. She's always done a little bit of this and that. She didn't until maybe the last 10 years. I don't think she considered herself an artist, but she's kind of come around to this view. Like I tell her, you make art, you're an artist, right? I mean, what is there? So anyway, she started doing these drawings a couple of years ago. And I was like, the trippy ones in particular, like the one that she did for this cover. I saw what she was doing, and I was like, oh, would you be interested in doing a cover for me? Because this next album I'm coming up with, like, it's about mystic experience and the occult and psychedelia and whatever, and like a cover like this would really fit. And she's like, yeah, sure. And I think she did that in like an hour, and it's incredible. It's gotten so many nice comments. Like people really seem to like it. I love it. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah,
it blew me. And I didn't know what to expect when I asked for it either. She was just like, yeah, I'll get you something. And then she came back like an hour later. She's like, will this work? And I was like, holy shit, yeah, that's great.
Nice.
So yeah, I do like 50-50. I make about half of my own covers, and the other half I've commissioned from different artists. I like to work with artists that I know. Okay. Personally, from my real life. My spaceship was designed by a guy I used to work with at a magazine that I helped run. Another album cover is done by...
That's kind of like your logo and your icon
you're
talking about. Okay. Yeah.
Right. Yep. Another album cover, the one with the tentacles, was done by a guy I've known since I was like 19 years old, like my entire life. I hired him to do that one, So every other one, I'll hire someone or get someone that I know to do it. And then the ones between, I do collage art and photo illustrations, which is the kind of style of art that I do. And I actually do covers for other people too. I just did one for an artist last month, actually. It's up on Ample on Bandcamp. The album's called Thesis and Statement. The artist's name was, I'm blanking on his name. It's JJ something. I can send you a link if you're interested, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I'd like to check that out. And the other reason I brought you here today, and I think this is how I actually heard about you. And the funny thing is,
most people know me this way, I think.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you how this came about, but pretty much within the first couple of seconds of you introducing yourself, I'm like, oh, that's why he does it.
Yeah.
And it is your project called Other People's Music, and on your site, you basically have people submit their songs. And I saw this on Mastodon. You were doing a call out for another round of it. Yep. And you review other people's music. Tell me about how this got started and just tell me about the project in general.
So before I have been doing other people's music in one form or another for 6 years. I think I started it around 2020. It might have been 2021. So either 5 or 6 years. I've only been properly doing it, like as the blog called Other People's Music, it'll be 2 years in April. Okay. I hit my 2-year anniversary in April, so real soon, like 3 weeks from now, or 2 weeks from now. But I got started because when I was so I started doing the music real seriously in 2019. Around after that year, when I started to, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to show anyone this. This is for me, right? I'm going to make this music for me. But then, I was like, I think this may be all right. I think this is pretty good, and I want to show some people. So I started putting it out there, and I found it was really hard to get people to listen to it. It's like pulling teeth, getting someone to listen to your music.
Wait, you mean people don't instantly give you thousands of dollars every time you release a song?
Yeah, no, you're lucky if you get a dozen listens, just by throwing it out there to someone. So I started exploring different ways to listen, and it occurred to me pretty early on that I was doing the same thing that was frustrating me. I would throw something out there. I'd be like, hey, someone listen to this, please. Someone tell me what you think. Like on Reddit or whatever, Twitter back in the day. Mm-hmm. And like one or two people would maybe respond, and be like, yeah, it's all right. Pretty good.
Right.
And then nothing, just crickets. And you'd look at your streams and see that 2 people got halfway through it, and then you're like, great, okay, cool. Right. What am I even doing here? And so I started being like, hey, maybe let's try listen for listen, right? I'll listen to yours, you listen to mine. And I started doing this on Reddit. I was a mod for years in the Synthesizers Reddit, which is the biggest synth Reddit on. We had when I left, we had over 300,000, maybe even 500,000 subscribers to that subreddit. I quit when Reddit got all corporate and weird. I was like, I'm not working for free for, when it felt like a community, I'm willing to put in free labor into a community.
Yeah.
Fediverse, whatever, other people's music. It's what I'm trying to do. But I'm not working for a corporation for free. If you're going to monetize what I'm doing and not pay me some of that money, you can get fucked. And so I quit when that happened. But at the time, I was a mod there, and I started there a weekly thread. The thread already existed, but it was a ghost town. 3 people would post in it every week and get 0 responses. It was a listen to my stuff thread, right? And so I was like, I'm going to take this over and I'm going to turn it into something. So I took it over and I made rules. I said, if you submit, you got to listen. You got to listen to at least one other track and give them feedback, because that's what this is for. It only works if you do both sides. And I would just police it. If you submitted, you had 1 hour after you submitted to listen to someone else's track and respond. And then to make sure that everyone got covered, because I couldn't say, well, no, I wasn't going to assign stuff. I was going to say, well, this guy hasn't had a listen yet, so you go listen to him. I wasn't going to, that's insane. That wouldn't have worked at all. But so I was like, I will make sure that everyone gets one listen, because I will listen to them and I will write about them. And I'll make sure everyone gets a quality listen, because I'm a former professional music journalist. And so I'm not just going to go, yeah, good, sounds good. I'm going to tell you what's good about it. I'm going to take 5 minutes to figure out what's working about your track. And because it's all strangers, I'm not going to get into what you fucked up or what I would do differently. I'm just going to tell you what I think works. I'm going to note 1 or 2 things that I think works about your song. And so I would just do that every week. I was doing 20 a week. Because it got popular once people started actually responding, right? People were like, oh shit, you can get someone to listen to your music in here. So every week I would do 20 of them.
Well, and get a single song. Being able to reference a review is actually even bigger than going, oh, look at all the streams I got. Actually having a response is a big deal. Yeah.
And people really appreciated it. I mean, I got, it went from, people just tell me all the time, it's so great that you're doing this. It's so nice of you to do this. I really appreciate the time you took. And I was like, well, that's nice. And people, I was like, I could probably, when I quit Reddit, I wanted to keep doing it. So I was doing it on Twitter and on Mastodon, when I was still on both, just to end the threads. It's just someone, I would say, if someone would post a song and I would go listen to it and respond and just leave them a review underneath it, 2 or 3 line reviews, a little shorter than what I currently do for other people's music,
right?
But not much. Just whatever would fit in a tweet. So on Mastodon, 500 characters. On Twitter, I think it was 420 or whatever at the time, because Elon's done this. That people liked it, and so I was like, oh, I should collect these. I should probably have a home for them. Maybe formalize this into a thing. And so I decided I had this blog that I'd created or this website I'd created for my music project. It wasn't really doing much, It was just like, here's my music and here's my link to my socials, just kind of a generic artist website. I was like, well, I can just slap a blog on there and I'll just do it. And I'll make it clear that it's not my music. It's other people's music. I'll just call it other people's music.
Right.
So that was the name. I'm a musician. I'm reviewing other people's music. Here it is. And when I first started, I was like, I'll just do whatever I get that week. So some weeks I had 7, some weeks I had 4, some weeks I had 1 week I did 9. And then I was like, well, if I'm going to do this every week, I should just pick a number, do that every week. And then I'll have a backlog, obviously, but that way I'll always make sure I have some and it'll be consistent. So I pretty quickly settled on 5 a week. That was two years ago, and just continued to pick up in popularity, and people seem to appreciate it. I'm actually getting I get paid a little bit for it now, just by donations only. I don't do advertising. I don't everything is free for everyone. It's free for the artists. I do not believe in charging for reviews. I don't think that's actually a review. That's something else.
Yeah.
It's a paid critique. I don't know.
Yeah, that's just Submit Hub is what that is.
Yeah, that model is weird to me, and I'm not trying to talk shit about anyone that does it. I have a friend who does it, so I like a close friend who does it.
The actual site and setup of Submit Hub is what I have a problem with. I mean,
it feels very weird and dirty to me, and I don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, getting paid to write reviews, yes, perfectly fine. Setting up an entire system that paywalls you even submitting stuff, go to hell.
Yeah, it's right, and it's weird when you're paying someone directly for a review. It's the same issue you have on YouTubers where they're like, I'm totally independent. Yes, they sent me this hardware. I get to say whatever I want. They don't have any influence. Okay, that's technically true, but you and I both know, and so does the guy doing the review, that if he savages that piece of gear, if he's like, this is fucking garbage, man, it is trash, throw it away. That company is never going to work with him again.
Of course.
They're going to blacklist him instantly. He has to say, even if it is actual trash, he has to say, oh, here's a use case. You could be really happy if you do this with it. And it's the same thing when you're paying someone to write. They're like, look, this guy's going to release more songs. If I tell him he's a fucking genius and blow smoke up his ass and say he's the next Barry Manilow, he's way more likely to give me $5 to review his next song than if I'm like, you are ass and you should stop.
Barry Manilow is what cinches that argument. I like the fact that was your reference point. That's nice.
Yeah.
So now with this review, I just really, when I saw that's why I followed you. I was like, that's really cool. You're doing that. Like, I appreciated someone just going like, no, and you weren't even like going, listen to my music. You were just like going, I'm doing another round of it. That's super cool. Now for people who are just hearing this, who are checking out the interview, like where could they go sign up for a thing like that?
Yeah. So if you go to my website, it's etherdiver.com. It's super easy to find. I'm real good at finding unique phrases that are both relatively memorable and but also somehow no one's ever come up with them before. And to be fair, etherdiver means actual nothing. But it's memorable, right? But yeah, you go to etherdiver.com. It's all right there. There's right on the front page. There's a submission guidelines link across the top menu. Mm-hmm. I'll run you through it real quick. It's super simple. It is community based, so you have to be part of the community. So you can follow me on Blue Sky or Mastodon. You can follow the blog via RSS or via subscription, like an email subscription. All of those count. Okay. Mm-hmm. I ask that you, being part of that community, that you check out at least a few other ones. A few issues. I don't police it. Right. I couldn't. There's no way. It would be insane.
It's encouraged, is what you're saying.
It's encouraged. I would even say it's required, but I don't check. I just trust you. Right?
You're saying just don't be a dick.
I trust you.
Go
just don't be a dick. Go check out, read. Specifically I say, look, read every single entry in the issue or the episode that you come out in. Right? It's only 4 other ones, and they're 110 words each. It will literally take you 5 minutes to read them. Okay? Mm-hmm. And if any of that looks interesting to you, click on the music and listen to a track or two. That's all I'm asking, really.
Yeah.
Okay? And then maybe you do that for it. If you find it useful, do that for a couple. If you really find it useful, subscribe and just read it every week. That'd be great. It would be amazing, but not required. Like I say, you could subscribe to the blog. That's one way to follow me. I just want you to be involved. That's all I'm really asking for, right? And then you have to be, the artist themselves has to request it. Not a friend of the artist, not a record label. And this comes down to the friend. So part of that is that some people actually don't want to be reviewed. Mm-hmm. They want their music to be out there, but they don't feel comfortable for whatever reason being reviewed. I know it's a minority, but I don't want to step on anyone's toes. Mm-hmm. If someone doesn't like me or like my vibe or like my takes on things, maybe they don't want a review by me, and so I don't want a friend of theirs saying, "Oh, this guy's great. He'll fucking give you, I'm going to submit your music." So it's got to be by the artist himself. And then also with bands that are big enough to be on labels, it feels a little, I don't want to work for labels for free. I don't want to do free promo for people that can afford to pay for promo, is what it boils down to. If you are a small enough band, I don't care if you're on a label or not. That's totally fine. Even if you're on Polydor. If you're on Polydor, but you're willing, as someone in the band, to come reach out to me on Blue Sky or whatever and say, yeah, sure, my band's on Polydor, but I like what you do. Can you review me? I'll still do it. Right. It's not like I have a limit for how big you are. The limit is, if you're still small enough for someone in the band to reach out directly, right? You're small enough that you're still doing at least some of your own promo, then you're small enough to work with me, right? That's all I ask.
As long as you're not
to reach out directly. If Barry wants to reach out, Barry, if you're out there, you want me to review a release that you have coming out, you have to reach out yourself, but I'll do it. Barry Manilow it'd be like when you verify on Reddit, he'll be like, "Hi Cory, this is me," and he'll hold it up, and I'll be like, "Shit, okay, Barry wants a review, I'm giving it to him."
Oh, that's awesome.
And then that's basically it. And you have to be on an equitable platform. I will not go on. It has to be both equitable and something that people can. You can't make people sign up or sign in or whatever to listen to it. It just has to be, any person has to be able to click and listen for free without signing into anything. And then if they like it, they have to have some method to contact you or pay you.
Mm-hmm. So
directly, right? So Spotify, all that shit's out. No Apple Music, no Spotify, no Deezer, Qobuz. I know you can buy stuff on Qobuz, but you have to sign up to check their shit out. So I'm just not messing with that. Bandcamp, Ampwall, Merlot, self-hosted, SoundCloud. And SoundCloud and YouTube are the two that I'm like, ugh. But people use them for promo.
Right.
And it is possible to do them for free and not make people sign in. So they still, even though I'm a little sketchy about them, like they barely count, but they do still count.
Yeah.
And if there's something else, if you're on something else and you're not sure, just reach out and ask me. I'll work with you. We'll figure something out.
All right. And then before we go today, is there anything you have coming up or anything you're working on that you want to tell people about?
I promised you an exclusive, and here it is.
Yeah, so, that's kind of why I bring that up.
Yeah. So I've been struggling with what to do next, and I realized that I don't. I've been getting more and more into playing synthesizers and less and less into sequencing programming and whatever. I mean, I still do lots of sequencing programming and whatever. But and so I decided that I want to do. I'm launching a side project. It's called Synthesizer Mystic. That's the name of it. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be live played synthesizers releases. Probably fairly common. Like once I get it going, I'm probably going to do like a release a month. I might do it like subscription only or something like that. It'll really only be for people who are already like fans, people who are already like interested in what I'm doing and whatever. I think I'm sure it'll pick up everything that I've done that I'm like, oh, no one will be interested in this. It's always picked up its own weird share of fans. So I should have more faith, I guess, that at least some people will be interested in what I'm doing. But it's really a way for me to explore getting more into playing. I want to play live at some point. I've never done that. And it's a way for me to practice doing that and produce a body of work that when people are like, yeah, because sometimes people ask me, well, this is cool, but can you play it live? And I'm always like, maybe I could figure something out. I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah. So I'm going to figure that out, what exactly I can do live. I'm working on releases now. There's already a Bandcamp site for it, although there's nothing there yet, just a little icon that I made.
Yeah.
So first release will probably come out, I'm guessing within a month, but I always say that and then everything takes me longer than I think it's going to. But that'll be my next thing that I'll be releasing is this.
But it sounds like you have a goal. Project. Yeah.
Thanks.
I'm gonna have to keep an eye out for that. That's really cool. I'll
be posting all over Mastodon and Blue Sky. You won't be able to miss it if you're following.
Oh yeah.
Me, so.
And we follow each other, so I'll of course keep an eye out for it. Well, I want to thank you so much for talking with me today. This has been fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you.